readers. Welcome, code breakers and page turners, to Reading in the Middle. I'm your host, Annisha Jeffries, and today we've unearthed a literary mastermind. The one and only James Ponti is here. He's the brains behind globe-jumping City Spies, the cunning framed teen sleuths, the spine-tingling Dead City Underworld, and, fresh from the press, the crime-solving siblings of the Sherlock Society, now racing hurricanes in their newest Hurricane Heist. Let's dive into the world of clues, capers, and unexpected humor. Let's begin. James, welcome to Reading in the Middle.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I love being here. I'm so excited. And I love talking about books. Sometimes feels awkward talking about my books as opposed to just books in general, but it's always fun to talk with you about all things middle grade.
Thank you. And I'm so happy to have you here. Now, your books, they take readers from like underground tunnels and of New York to spy missions in Paris and mysteries in Miami. If we think of your writing career as a map where you would say home base is for you as a storyteller, what would we think, or what would you say home base is?
Well, do you mean in the stories themselves or for me personally?
Yes, in your stories.
Well, I love to travel. I grew up in a small town in Florida, but a beach town near a bigger city. And my mom was all about traveling. I was born in Italy. I moved to America when I was little. So already she was about traveling. And so my books are set in my favorite places in the world.
Nice.
I love New York City, and that is the setting for the first series I wrote, which was Dead City. Growing up, our most common vacation, so I grew up in North Florida. We would hop in a car and we would drive to Washington, D.C., because everything in Washington, D.C. was free. Once you get there, your hotel and your food costs, but the museums and the monuments and all like that was the vacation we could afford. And so Washington, D.C. is the setting for the Frame series. For work, I got to travel internationally. And then, later in life, I had a little bit more money and I was able to travel internationally, and that became the City Spies. And so the City Spies go to my favorite places: London, Paris, Rome, San Francisco, New York, all these places that I love. And, for my newest series, Sherlock Society, I thought that it would be fun to do something closer to my actual home. So I grew up in Northern Florida. I live in Central Florida, and the books are set in Miami. And then I have a lot of Florida-specific stuff, a lot of ocean stuff. So the location of the books is like deep in my heart. These are the places that I love. I love adventure and I love mystery, and so there are elements of adventure and mystery in all the series. And so it's finding those. And in my, I've had different jobs. I started off as a kids television writer. I used to produce documentaries for cable TV. So I produced documentaries for the History Channel where I went into tunnels, and that became, when I write these books, I remember being in these tunnels beneath Boston, beneath New York. I shot a documentary at the top of the George Washington Bridge, 650 feet in the air it was terrifying. And that became the climax of my first book. So they're the places that I've been and that I've loved and that I want to share with young readers.
It's fascinating. It really is fascinating. Wow, I did not know that about you. So thank you for sharing that.
I contain
Yeah.
multitudes. There's a lot.
Yes.
There's
Now,
and a lot of Oreos. Yeah. Okay.
oh yeah, you have
Yeah.
definitely
A lot of those.
Oreos. A lot of
Yeah.
those. Now, with the Oreos, do you like just eat
Oh,
it regularly, or
I don't believe in separating.
what? Okay,
No.
I can't talk to you now.
It's meant to be a vanilla chocolate treat. It's not meant to be yeah. So I
I'll forgive you this time.
respect the creation of the model. Books are read start to finish.
You're right.
Dessert comes after the main course, and you eat an Oreo vertically, not horizontally. All right, there we go.
Hopefully, you'll see it my way one day.
I respect your way. It's just not for me.
Okay. Now, your new book, it comes out September 2nd.
Yep.
It's the Hurricane Heist, and it takes the Sherlock Society into a storm, literally, and
Well,
into a decades-old cold case. What made you want to put your characters um, in the middle of both natural disaster and a mystery?
well, I grew up in Florida, and I grew up at the beach in Florida, so hurricanes were a real threat. That was a part of your life. And then actually, I've been involved in more hurricanes since I lived in Central Florida, which I thought would be the opposite because it's not on the coast. But we've had a bunch blow through here, and so hurricanes have been different for me depending on how old I was.
Okay.
When you're a kid, there's this weird part of a hurricane which is, well, canceled school, so that's kind of good, and you're scared, but you're also kind of excited, and you just don't know how. And all the adults have so much responsibility, So I had that kid experience of a hurricane, and then I've had it as an adult where it's like, okay, I have to figure out how to prepare, protect the house and lock
Mhm.
things up and do X, Y, and Z. And that combination of anxiety and uncertainty, I just feel like it's naturally dramatic. And so I thought, I have a series set in South Florida. I mean, the college team is the Miami Hurricanes for a reason, right? This is like where that stuff happens. So I thought, it's a great both literal and metaphorical situation to put them in. You know,
Mhm.
there's danger out there. There is a time limit, but it's a somewhat undefined time limit, and there's luck. It takes a turn, and now we're fine. But this neighborhood, I'm in front of my house right now, and I look out and I see a street, and it's a great outdoor view for me to ride on.
Mhm.
And 2 blocks away is the lake, and we had a hurricane that flooded 5 blocks,
Whoa.
destroyed. Houses had to be totally gutted, all like that. And I was a block away, and my house got tree damage, but we didn't have flooding damage. And it's just okay. Who knew? And so that aspect, it's funny. I was rewriting it last year when a hurricane came through town, and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go do part of the rewrite right now. She goes, we have a hurricane. I go, I know. I want to be able to
Yeah.
tell kids that I wrote about a hurricane during a hurricane, and so that is realistically true. And so I did some of the rewrite during the hurricane until the power went up. Actually, I think we kept power during that one. You never can rely on power, though.
No, you can't rely on
No.
power, and you have to have a flashlight handy too,
Oh,
just in
we
case.
have boxes of like, okay, here are our lanterns, and here are this, and here's our battery packs, and all the stuff you need. Yeah.
And it's a lot of tension too. So hurricanes are real
Yeah.
and high stakes events like you just mentioned. Now, how do you make since you're in it, how do you make that tension feel really, really authentic without crossing into territory that might be too scary for your audience?
Well, the books are maps for growing up in a way. They're entertainment. They're all these things, and one of the things that you put these characters in these books through these difficult situations, these
Mhm.
roller coasters of emotions. And one of the reasons is you're also showing that you can make it through these. These are manageable things that seem unmanageable. And a hurricane's a really great example of that. I mean, obviously, there's some devastation that's unavoidable. You need to evacuate. There's all, but that there's a spot in the book, I think, where one of the characters says, it's scary, but we know how to protect against most of it. So we're going to do this. We're going to take the steps to be safe and cautious and all like that. And that, I think, is a really great way for young people to see. Okay, there are things you can do. You're not helpless in this unpredictability.
Mhm. Now, this is the second book to the
Right.
Sherlock Society, right? So the first book we meet like Alex and Zoe and their siblings, Sherlock siblings,
Right.
with different personalities, and they work together surprisingly well. Did you always know they'd be there well that they'd be family, or did that come later in the process?
No, it started originally just with family. It started, the very first notion I had was actually called the Sherlock Sisters, and it was about two sisters whose last name was Sherlock. And then I changed that to a brother and sister just to have a little more representation. And, I always want readers to be able to identify strongly with one of the characters. And then that led me to expand it beyond the family. And talks with my editor. My editor is really helpful on stuff like this when we're devising the concept. And let's add a couple friends in. So we have a really nice mix of different people. And we have four different types of relationships. So we have a sibling relationship, we have a best friend relationship, we have a new friend relationship, and we have a we're not really friends, but we're putting this together relationship. So that really is kind of a gamut of interpersonal relations for tweens. And we have, so that I knew would give me, I don't know what I'm going to do with that at the start, but I know that should be a rich environment for me to come up with, because the mysteries are really important. I want the mysteries to be good and the stakes and all like that.
And they are.
But to me, ultimately, these are always about the relationship of kids and family, friends and family. And that's what I want to write about. And these mysteries and these adventures are things that allow me to expose that and explore that. But, so I just want, really rich with potential. And so that, that gave me the rich potential of these four kids who were all really different and were at different levels of closeness to each other.
And also Grandpa Pete. Yeah,
Yes.
he's one of those rare side characters who feels like a main character. And,
I think of him as a main character. I absolutely do. So the Sherlock Society has 5 members. It has 4 kids, and it has Grandpa and Grandpa Pete. And Grandpa was born out of necessity. So when I worked in television, I worked at Nickelodeon, and we used to have, on the series, we had this kind of rule, which was there needs to be a 16-year-old character at least, because you need someone who can drive the kids around. Because how are they getting around? Because, at a certain point, an audience is going to wonder, how do these kids get all over the place, right? And so in all the shows, someone was 16, and even though we never showed them driving, we could always, if someone wrote to us and asked, we'd say, oh, well, Noah drove because Noah's 16 and he can drive. We can't have a 16-year-old in a middle grade book. That would make it a young adult book. So I have 2 12-year-olds and 2 13-year-olds, and I need them to be able to get around Miami. Now, in my first 2 series, the way I dealt with that was mass transit. New York and Washington, great subway, mass transit system, so the kids can get around. But I knew I didn't have that. Florida has no good mass transit. Miami, what I wanted to do was I wanted to touch on Miami that included Miami Beach and the Everglades and the Keys and the ocean and Coconut Grove and downtown and the Design District and Wynwood, all these different parts of town. And so I needed them to be able to get around. So that was the reason Grandpa was born. But then I just didn't want, they take advantage of their grandfather and they have him drive around. I want him to be an actual participant. And that led to, well, what kind of guy would help? And I thought of, an investigative journalist who's no longer able to investigate stuff for the paper because he's retired, but now has this new avenue with these kids. And along the way, gets to share with them the techniques and the lessons he learned 40 plus years writing for the Miami Herald that they can use to solve mysteries, but more importantly, that they eventually can use in life to solve all the mysteries of life that they'll face growing up.
It's wonderful because Grandpa Pete, he actually is there also to keep the detective team grounded. And, and he may sometimes he bends the rules just a little bit.
He does. So he's a little bit of a chaperone, but not a reliable chaperone. And so he's enough of a chaperone. So, what I don't like it was really common in like kid movies when I was growing up. And I think it's probably true in some kid books, which is just I don't like the concept that, parents are stupid and oblivious and don't know what's going on. And so I wanted parents who are involved, but Grandpa gives them a buffer for getting away with stuff that under direct parental supervision they couldn't probably get away with. And so yes, I never knew my dad. It's like I literally never met him. And so I was raised by my mom. I had a great mother. I had a great childhood, but I had this missing parent. And the first 12 books I wrote are really about that. All the characters, all the books revolve a key plot around a missing parent, whether it's Molly's mom being dead in Dead City, or um, Margaret looking for her birth parents in Framed, or all the kids who are adopted in City Spies. There's missing parents. And I told my wife, I said, this is the book that is set where I grew up. This is the most personal, probably. I think it's time to stop writing about the family that I grew up in and start writing about the family that you and I raised. And so my perspective of family is here more about as a parent. And so with that in mind, it's like I wanted two parents, and all the other kids' parents are involved at different times as well, and that we really get to know them, and that they're involved, and that sometimes the kids make mistakes, they get in trouble. I'm just writing City Spies 3 right now, and I've just been dealing with this whole two of the kids get grounded, and it's like how that impacts I'm sorry, Sherlock Society 3. So yeah, having the responsible adults, but still a fun-loving adult. And Grandpa is really fun character to write. He's very funny. I hope. I try for him. I hope he's funny.
He is.
And he is engaging, and he loves life and kids fully. He also, what's great about Grandpa is he treats the kids with respect. He thinks that they're capable of things. And I didn't know if kids would respond to that. I expected a lot of adults would like that when they read, and kids have really liked Grandpa when I toured around with the book last year. And so for this book, I thought it would be really fun to see Grandpa when he was 12. And so that's why we have 3 of the chapters spread throughout the book are set during a hurricane in 1964 when Grandpa was 12. And that way the kid's going to get to see where he came from, and they can connect with him more personally. And by kids, I mean readers.
Your books, they often have humor tucked between tense scenes. Do those moments come naturally, or do you go back and add them in later?
Well, I have a writing style that I don't know if many people use. Actually, I recently was talking to the amazing author Pam Munoz-Ryan, and Pam and I write the same way, which made me feel so much better. Pam, she calls it recursive writing, and so when I write, I start at the beginning and I write a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Then I rewrite that chapter once or twice, and then I'll write the next chapter. Then I still go back to the beginning and I rewrite along the way until I get to the third chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go back to the beginning and I start over every day. And then after we get long enough, maybe you only go back 4 or 5 chapters, but you always are going back. So there's not a lot of, I don't do like a pass and then go back and put stuff in. It's like, as I go, I think, oh wait, that's missing something. So let's add that there. But I have a theory on writing that's based on animal husbandry, oddly enough. So this I was talking to this guy. I was with the History Channel, and I was interviewing this guy who was an oil guy, but he also owned cattle ranches. And he talked to me about the key to cattle is mixing breeds, and that it's called hybrid vigor. And that if you mix 2 breeds of cattle together, what ends up happening is the strongest parts of their unique breeds rise to the top, and their offspring is superior to them. So in a way, it's why mutts like my dog tend to live longer than purebreds, right? Because you have the strengths of multiple things. And I write that way. So if people say, oh, you write mystery, I'll say yes. Or, oh, you write adventure, I'll say yes. But actually what I think I do is I write mystery, adventure, comedy, family, drama. And I have those 4 genres, and I blend them. And I blend them hopefully so that, okay, the mystery structure is really strong. So having a mystery plot gives us structure, and adventure really gives us movement. So having a adventure take, and by doing that, you get the best of all 4 genres. But also what you do is you get surprise. I was always amazed at, I was a TV kid when I was a kid. And there'd be certain shows. One I remember specifically, Taxi, was the show that I
Yeah, I
was
love
too young for, but I still loved it. And I watched it. And
it.
then in reruns, I watched it again. But Taxi was this amazing show because I would watch it and I'd laugh and I'd laugh and I'd laugh. And then all of a sudden, sometimes I would cry. And I'm like, how did they hit me with this emotion? How did this comedy that I had been and really what I came to realize as I would go back and rewatch, and I went to film school, I majored in screenwriting, and I'm like, what they're doing is they're using the comedy to lower your defenses. And because you're
Smart.
laughing and you're not, if I am doing a mystery, just a mystery, then you know everything is a clue and you can figure it out. But if everything's not a clue because I'm not just doing a mystery, well, that makes that harder to figure out. If I am doing what we would call when I was a kid an after school special,
I
you
love
would
those.
know that when this person said, "Oh, you shouldn't go there," that they were going to go there and they were going to get hurt and they were going to learn this life lesson as they recovered from their injury or whatever, right? Or or if they're getting dressed for a big dance and all of a sudden there's blood where you don't expect blood, that they're going to have, like, oh my goodness, they have some terrible disease, because you're trained to understand that's what after school specials do.
Yes.
But if you're watching a comedy, you're not looking for those, and you can put those same clues in and you don't notice them because you're watching the comedy, and then all of a sudden it hits you. And so I am hoping there are humorous moments, and I am hoping there are moments that catch you off guard emotionally, but not in a cheap way, because I don't believe in cheap emotion, and like, oh wow, oh, there's in at the end of the City Spies book that comes out in February, so book 7. Um, I reread, like, because again, when you're doing recursive, you're rereading, and you're rereading, and at the end, I was rereading, and in rereading one of I started to cry, and I thought, oh, I can't. Then I thought, well, you must not be writing well because your own work shouldn't make you cry. But then I read that part again, and I just realized that, oh, I had hopefully done this right, and for me, it was right,
Hmm.
that I have set up this moment for a long time in all the action and all the anger and the conversation and the excitement and the thrills and the adventure, that we're going to have this moment. And then last night, actually, as it happens, I got a letter from a mother who, it just melted me in the best way, that she runs a book club with her kids and with, like, her son and his friends, and they read all 3 frame books. And they normally don't read sequels, but the kids insisted because they just had to know what happened. And they had to know what happened again. And then she felt compelled to write me because of the last 3-page chapter, the epilogue, and how it touched her. And it warmed me in a way, because it's like everything she said was everything I had hoped for. Was that if you look at it, the 900 and maybe it's 1,000 pages for 3 books, those 1,000 pages were really designed for those 3 pages, even though I didn't know that as I was writing the first 950. And that was the moment I was looking for. And that's kind of why I don't think there'll be another one of those books, is like, I got to the moment that I wanted to get to, and that she wrote to me to say how much it meant to her. Really felt good.
Doesn't that make you, like, as a writer, when you receive letters like that, you don't expect, first of all, I don't know, do you expect to receive any feedback from
No,
your work?
no,
But then,
I don't expect anyone to read any of the books. I'm always amazed if someone says, "Oh my goodness, I read your book." I'm like, "Really?" It's like, it is, but you don't expect that. That's not the way, at least that's not the way I'm wired. I know intellectually, well, we wouldn't be making them if we wouldn't keep making them if they weren't selling them, and people wouldn't buy them if they didn't plan to read them. But even still, those are theoretic people. An actual person to say, "I read your book," just still is like, oh, really? That's so great, you know? And to connect with it, or the thought that, my postal carrier, every day we always wave, or the thought that a mother would once a week meet with a group of kids and they would read aloud or talk about my books and then consecutive books. No, I don't expect that ever.
It's a
That's just,
connection.
yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about what we do is it is a connection that you never see, but you do make. It's like, I do know out there somewhere there's a kid tonight reading one of the books. I tell you, the hardest one for me to get over was people would post sometimes and they would send me on social media pictures of their kids happily opening a Christmas present that was my book. And I'm like, first of all, if I got a book for Christmas, I was devastated. I'm like, oh, I want a toy. I want a toy. But it's like that you thought that this book was worthy of wrapping and giving on Christmas or a birthday or any other holiday or any other religious event or whatever. It just, pinched me every time.
That's awesome, and that's great. And to be honest, I would love to get a book for Christmas as a child. I was that much of a geek.
Well, that's all I give now. That's all I want now. But I struggled as a reader growing up. I really struggled a lot. I was very slow at it. And I got very frustrated at it.
Mhm.
I wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't a good reader, which is why I ended up heading towards and then majoring in college in screenwriting. It's like movies and TV shows move at a pace that I can keep up with. I
Yes.
can keep up with everyone else. It's not about it's like what was frustrating to me was in class, we would read and everyone else would finish and I wouldn't finish. So I wouldn't know. As someone who always wanted to be prepared for class, it's like I don't know the things you're talking about now. So I can't participate. So I'm at a disadvantage. And rather than work hard to get better at it, I kind of tuned it out for a long time. And then eventually fell in love with reading. But unfortunately I was an adult at the time.
But it's never too late. Never,
It's
never.
never too late. No. But it would have helped in school along the way, I think, if I read more. That would have helped a lot.
James, if a class or a book club wanted to start their own Sherlock Society, what's a mystery or activity you would suggest for
Well,
them?
you can join the Sherlock Society. We have on my website. There's a thing, and schools can join it. And they Simon and Schuster helped me set it up, and you can download membership cards. There's like there's a couple like play along mysteries that are already part of the packet. You get a certificate for your library because in the book, the Sherlock Society meets in the school library. So I thought, oh, it'll be fun if actual school libraries wanted to do it, and I think a bunch of libraries signed up at least at first. So that's on my website that you can do. I think
Oh, and James, what's your website?
jamesponti.com,
Awesome. Okay. That's
and it's also on I think there's the connection to the Simon and Schuster. If you look up Simon and Schuster and James Ponti, they have all my stuff because they created that. I asked them. I said, I want to come up with this stuff, but I need you to make it look better. See, my wife is a high school history teacher, and the
nice.
mantra from her is always make stuff for teachers, make it free, and have it be done. So all they have to do is click and download. Don't give them work to do. And so I have always tried to come up with a lot of elements that aren't promotional, that are just additive, like expand the universe of the books. And here you have these things. And, it for Frame, there is a mystery, like there's the play along mystery that you can play in a school library or with a book club. And you just download it and it's got the clues, it's got the script and you can work on it from there. So, yeah, I think you want to do that. I think if you started your own, Sherlock Society, there are just so many great mystery books that you can start reading, that you can read together, and any one of these things should be about reading these mysteries more than
Let's start
actually
with
playing.
yours. Let's start with
Well,
yours.
no, we don't start with mine. Don't start, you can start with any of them. I was just doing a list of great mysteries. So I grew up on my favorite book as a non-reader. There was a book that I was obsessed with as a kid. There were two actually. One was called From the Mixed Up Files, and this is basically Frank Wilder. Great classic mystery. The other was actually a series of books. It was the Encyclopedia Brown books. And what I loved about those was that the stories were short. There was always like 10 mysteries, I think, in each book. And you could try to figure it out. And then in the back of the book, you had to turn it over and you could read the solution. And that lets you see if you could solve it. And those are both great starters. There's a really interesting, it's complicated, but I think in a good way complicated book called oh goodness, Chasing Vermeer. Chasing Vermeer was wonderful.
I love it. Yes.
My friend Stuart Gibbs, who writes Spy School, has a great series called the Fun Jungle series. It starts with Belly Up. That's a great mystery. You got, let me see, I have a whole list of it because I was just working on this. The Parker Inheritance by Marianne Johnson. There's so many good books. Liar and Spy by Rebecca Stead. Really, really great. Green Glass. I forget, Green Glass House, I think it's called. Really, there's so many great mysteries out there. We live in a golden era of kid mysteries, I think. Now, a lot of my friends who write mysteries are in love with a book called The Westing Game, which I missed and I didn't read, so I need to go back and read. I was the wrong age when it came out. So you should do that. And then what I think would be fun, if you start your club, you should read these, but also you should make up like not baseball cards, but like fact sheets about the different detectives in the books to see what do they have in common, what do they have differently, how do they solve their mysteries. And then if you throw Framed or Sherlock Society in there, that's great. Framed, the fun thing in the Framed books was I came up with this thing called Toast, the theory of all small things. And Toast is how they solve the mysteries by looking only at little details. So kids will come up to me and they'll say, I read Framed and now I use Toast in real life because it really actually works. And, that's fun. So I think if you start your own group, you'll want to do something like that.
That's awesome. Great advice. Thank you, James, for
Sure.
giving us some mystery books too,
Oh, for
listeners.
sure.
That's very important as well. Now, James, it's time for our fun lightning round. This is
Oh, wait,
where
I'm going to
I
throw one.
ask.
I left one off that list.
Oh,
Looking to read mysteries. Read the Carl Hiaasen mysteries. Hoot, Chomp,
Hoot.
Sludge.
Yes.
So good. Scat. I forget what the last one, the snake is, but yeah, it's those are great. Okay, now we're doing fast mystery or lightning round.
Fun lightning round. Yep.
Okay,
I asked you a question. You don't even think. You just
let me hydrate.
okay. Yep. Hydrate.
Okay. I'm ready.
Ready?
I'm ready for lightning round.
Okay, here we go. If Grandpa Pete's Cadillac could have one impossible gadget, what would it be?
This is Grandpa Pete's Cadillac that I use. An impossible gadget. Thing is, you don't want something like an ejector seat because Grandpa's all about embracing, not rejecting. So here's the problem with that. I think there is not one, and by that I mean Grandpa won't even let them put like updated music in it. He wants it as it was in 1964 when they made it. So I guess it would maybe be. Oh, wow, you start off with a really complicated one for me.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, maybe smoke screen stuff so that when they have to get away from somewhere, because the problem with this car is it's a great car to get around Miami in. He drives a 1964 Aquamarine Fire Mist Cadillac Coupe de Ville convertible, a very specific car that I picked for Grandpa to have. And then its car is called Roberta. It's named after Roberta Flack, and there's a whole part of the first book that explains why it's called Roberta. And I think it is a great car to get around with. The problem is it stands out. So if you have been identified, it is not a good tailing. So he would maybe need some kind of jetpack or smokescreen to be able to evade people once they've been spotted.
Oh, right. That's a good one.
Okay.
Which of your characters across all of your books would you want to sit next to on a long plane ride?
Oh, Grandpa. Grandpa's got the most life experience to share. So long, I'm learning from him. But I love, I love the characters in the books, and it sounds odd when you create them, but it's like I I am
Yeah.
creating characters who I really connect with. And so if I would, if I want a good time, I think Grandpa's the one. If I would sit with Florian or Alec. Florian and Alex are the two characters who are most. Florian is the character in Framed. Alex is the narrator of Sherlock Society. The other ones who are the closest to what I was like as a 12-year-old. And I would sit with them and make sure they knew that just keep doing what you're doing. It's going to work out. Because there's a lot of times when I thought I am on a track to not anywhere interesting, and just to trust and keep being yourself. Because that's the thing we want books to give us in general, and we want adults to give us, is that reassurance that no, you being you is the right path. Don't try to change.
Yes, absolutely don't. And don't change for anyone.
Right.
3 words to describe Hurricane Heist.
Twisty, fun, exciting.
Very much so. And I love the twisty. Oh, that's it for our fun lightning round.
That was great.
James, yep, see, that was, you did it. You hydrated and you were able to get that right in there.
But if you read Hurricane Heist, you'll find out something that most people don't know about lightning and hurricanes. And that is they don't
say
mix.
anything. Don't say anything.
No, that doesn't give away. There rarely is lightning in a hurricane, and it has to do with the fact of hurricanes. And this, I'm really generalizing here, but it's hurricanes are horizontal, and lightning's up and down, and so like they don't. It doesn't work. Like all the stuff is going on side to side and around in a hurricane, and lightning's about connecting high and low. So, you know it's someone who's not from Florida if you see them do a hurricane effect and there's lots of lightning in it. It's like, okay, that's a thunderstorm. It's totally different. But anyway.
So what do you hope young readers and educators and librarians who hand out your books take away from spending time in your stories?
Well, I hope the stories work to meet the reader where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
If I am looking for entertainment, I hope they entertain you, right? If you are looking for connection, I hope you find characters who you connect with. If you're looking for, an idea of what middle grade life is like, you'll find that too. So I'm hoping they're in a way, I'm hoping they're finding themselves ultimately. I just did this podcast. So I put it on SherlockSociety.net and I put it on my website. But to promote this book as part of it, I didn't want to do promotion. So I thought, okay, I'll do my own version of a podcast. I interviewed 5 authors. Pam Munoz-Ryan, Jessica Warga, Stuart Gibbs, Alan Gratz, and Karina Jan-Glazer, right? And each one, we're just going to talk about a different part of writing. So Karina and I talked about setting, and Alan and I talked about plot, and Jasmine and I talked about character. And I talked to Jasmine about something which is, seeing yourself in a book and how important is it to connect with the character. And she said something really, because she's really smart. She said, I certainly want someone to see themselves in a book, but more importantly, I want them to find themselves through the book, not just the one character, but find a part of you. And that really goes into something I've often said, which is people say you get lost in a book. And I think that's the other way around. I think you get found in a book. I think you go to a book and you find yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you can find yourself in one of my books, I love it. And I am thrilled and honored. And if not, I would just say, keep looking, because you're going to find it in another one. There's a book out there. There are a bunch of books out there when you're going to read it and you're going to say, oh, wow. There's this, I have this theory about stand-up comics. Is the reason we laugh is most of the time it's because the comic says something out loud that you thought maybe only you thought. Like they say, like, oh, they notice this thing, and they put together, and you're laughing because it's like, oh, I'm not alone, right? Oh, I've noticed that, but they put it together in a funny way, and that's great. That's all like that. But that detail, oh yeah, and we want the same in a book. You see it, and it's like, oh, I know what that's like. All the things that happen in the book. I never solved a mystery. I've never been a spy. All the emotional stuff that happens in these books is all stuff that happened to me. When I was a kid, we went to Miami Beach, and we ended up at one of these resort hotels like they do in the book. And there's a funny story to it because, we were not a family that had the kind of money that could stay at a hotel like that. And when we pulled up to the hotel, they tried to wave us off. They tried to say, you don't belong here. And my mom was like, no, we have a reservation there. And she was a travel agent. She had a very small travel agency, but she put a lot of people in this hotel, and they had given her a room. And the guy checked, and he couldn't believe it. Not only did we have a reservation, but because they liked my mom so much, they put us in a 2-story penthouse suite at the top of this hotel. So I had the very real thing of a 12-year-old seeing people say, no, you don't belong here. But also seeing this like, oh my goodness, there's this exotic life where people stay in hotel rooms that are 2 stories and they have a balcony and a staircase and all this stuff. And it's thrilling and it's exciting. And it's where I live. It's in Florida where I live, but it's not for me. And so that's what young Pete feels when he visits this hotel as a boy. And he still feels it with all the stuff that he knows as a 73-year-old man and all that he's accomplished in life. He still feels like it's not really for me, because I feel that way. So hopefully there's humor and there's mystery in that, but hopefully also there's sometimes we feel excluded in that way. When I was 12 years old, I was very luckily one of like 18 kids in Northeast Florida picked to write for the Florida Times Union, Jacksonville Journal. Those are 2 newspapers in town. They were published together. And one summer, once a month, they would have this special, entirely written by kids section, little magazine. Mm-hmm. And I got picked to do that. And I knew I wanted to be a writer, even though I wasn't a strong reader. I loved writing. And I went there, and they gave me the notebook. That is the notebook that we have in the book. And there's a moment probably my favorite moment in Hurricane Heist is when 12-year-old grandpa gets the notebook, and then the building starts to shake. He's at the Miami Herald, and the building starts to shake, and he's nervous. Why is the building shaking? And the reporter says, don't worry, that's the printing press. And then he loves the idea that the power of the press is so much that it shakes the building. And that happened to me as a 12-year-old. And when I had that hand in my hand and that building started to move, mm-hmm. I thought, yeah, this is magic. So I take these moments from my life and I put them in there with the hope that someone reading it will have a similar connection, or like, oh wait, that's kind of neat. Maybe I'm interested in that. Or, mm-hmm. I'm not the only one who's felt excluded. So that's the hope, and, books are kind of magic. They take us places, and we go there. I have a conversation with kids I never meet, but I feel like it's a 2-way conversation. I feel like, I'm talking to them, and hopefully in their head, they're hearing a version of me that they then can respond to in their life.
And they are. And they're having book clubs, and they're having discussions, and teachers are passing them out, and librarians are recommending your books. And so it goes on and on. And James, this is like, I cannot tell you how happy and grateful I am that you agreed to be on this podcast.
Oh no, of course. I'm honored. And again, to get to talk about books. So the thing I was fearful about writing, because writing for television is a very much a team sport, and you're surrounded by people all the time. But writing my books is me and my dog, who's right off camera, alone most of the time. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't talk much. And I've been beyond pleasantly, ecstatically surprised by the fact that it's not lonely. There are obvious connections, other authors, librarians, booksellers, readers, people like you who love this stuff so much that we get to talk about it and share it. And it is a true community. And I just love being part of it. So thank you for having me on. Anyone who listens, I can't imagine you read my books. I can't imagine you'd listen to us, but surely you'll listen to her. But thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, oh, thank you. And to all of our listeners and watchers, you can get James' book at your uh, independent bookstore, wherever books are sold, your local libraries.
Libraries, get them at
Yes,
libraries. That's an absolutely great way. I'll tell you one
absolutely.
funny library story. So I wasn't a great reader, but when I was 10 years old, my mom took me to see the movie All the President's Men, which is really too old a movie for a 10-year-old, but I loved it. I loved it so much that I made my mom sit through it again, and we watched it back to back. So I thought, well, this is the movie. This is my favorite movie of all time. And so I went to the public library, and I walked up to the desk, and I didn't know how to find grown-up books. And I walked up to the desk. I said, I would like All the President's Men, please. And the librarian looked at me and said, that's not a book for you. I said, oh, no. That is a book for me. She goes, you don't know what it's about. I go, sure, I know what it's about. It's about Carl Bernstein and Robert and Bob Redford, and they work for the White House. Because I knew the movie so well. And they investigate the Nixon White House and Watergate and all like that. And she goes, okay. And she went and she got me the book and she handed it to me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is not the book for me. This is so thick. There's no way I can possibly read this book. But I can't, after I've just had this big moment with her, say, oh, you're right. I was wrong. So I said, thank you. I will go read this now. And I walked out the library and put it right in the return box because I didn't want to get a fine by forgetting. So I had it for 20 seconds. But libraries are where it's at. And like one of my fondest memories as a kid is being with my mom in the library when she read Where the Wild Things Are to me. And it was again, we didn't have a lot of money. We couldn't buy a lot of stuff. We go to the library and she could read, and it's just like, I just sit in a beanbag taken away with Max. And yeah, I love libraries. So please do that. Bookstores are great too. I love bookstores, support those. And just support reading however you can.
However you can. That's really great. And thank you, James. This was wonderful. I appreciate you being here and sharing your books and your stories. This was fantastic. I appreciate
I
you.
have a great time. You have a great time. You take care. See you.
And that's a wrap. A huge thanks to James Ponti, the architect of international spy crews, crime-solving dynasties, undead vigilantes, and now hurricane-chasing detectives. Whether you love international espionage or Florida mysteries buried in stone rubble, his stories remind us that courage, curiosity, and clever thinking can carry you anywhere. Don't forget to subscribe to Reading in the Middle wherever you get your podcasts, and share with a reader who is in for adventure. Until next time, keep sleuthing, keep imagining, and always, always keep reading in the middle.